Welcome to the Solid Signal podcast for the week of January 17th, 2022. The subject for this week's podcast is self-reliance. Now, it occurs to me that sometime in the last 10 years I've done a podcast about this, and I'm a little too lazy to look right now. But on the other hand, the data that I've got says that your average podcast has got a life of about 3 weeks. So I'm not expecting you to go back and look for it in the last 10 years. I'm certainly not going to go back and look for it in the last 10 years. Let's just move ahead and know that we can talk about the same thing every couple of years, and that's really okay. Self-reliance. You know, if you really want to get into the history of self-reliance, I mean, obviously, self-reliance is something that we have, as a species, have had for tens of thousands of years. But whether or not self-reliance was a good thing started to actually become a question 150 years ago or so, during the first industrial revolution. I mean, there was a time when pretty much you had to be self-reliant. You grew all the food that you ate, and you did everything. It was your land, and you either did it for yourself, or if you were, employed or indentured to someone, that you did it for them. But either way, I mean, it was all self-contained. And then the Industrial Revolution kind of came in, the rise of cities and towns, and the question started to become, to what extent is it okay to let somebody else do something for you in exchange for money or consideration or whatever? And, it was a big discussion 150 years ago, and it continues to be a big discussion. And the funny thing is, that every generation tends to have the same relationship with the generations that come after it, which is to say, to kids today, they don't know how to do anything. They expect it all to be done for themselves. They're not self-reliant. And maybe it's true, and maybe it isn't. And certainly older folks today are saying it about younger folks today at a rate perhaps even greater than it was said in the past. But that's a lot of philosophy. That's a lot of talking about high-level stuff, and that's probably not why you come to the Solid Signal podcast. You come to the Solid Signal podcast to learn about technical things and to get opinions about that, and occasionally because I go crazy and go off the rails, and that's entertaining, and apparently that's what people really want to hear, because that's the podcasts that get a lot of listening anyway. But let's talk about self-reliance when it comes to your electronic life. It's never been easier to rely on someone else or some other company to manage your electronic life for you. You can store all your passwords in an app. You can store all your data, all your pictures, and all your documents in the cloud through any one of several services. You can rely on an app to connect you to your friends and to give you the ability to communicate with them when you want. You can do an awful lot to try to not really have to do anything, if you think about it that way. And so you ask yourself, is that a good thing? 20 years ago, your entertainment was up to you. You had your collection of media with records, tapes, CDs, movies that you kept. And if you wanted something else, you went and you got it. You either rented it or you bought it. Your data was your responsibility. Backing up was up to you to get a portable hard drive or CD writer or whatever the technology at the time required. And that was a habit that a lot of us either got into or we regretted not getting into. But today, it's just so easy to rely on Microsoft or Apple or Google to do so much of that for you. You can have somebody else manage your electronic media. There's almost no way to avoid it now. I mean, yes, you can still buy media, physical media if you want. It isn't easy, and you can't find it locally usually, not what you're looking for. If you really wanted to. If you want to back up your files yourself, you can do it on portable hard drives. That's not hard to do, except for it doesn't happen automatically the way that You get it with, something like Microsoft OneDrive or Google Drive. So should you bother? Should you bother? And there's one more bit too that I meant to mention. When it comes to your entertainment, you're probably relying on your internet service provider and a streaming provider to make sure that you are entertained during the day. And we all do it, of course. There's nothing wrong with that. But how self-reliant should you be with your home entertainment? That's another great question. It all depends on your personal comfort level and the level of discipline that you want to take on. Personally, I got to tell you, I'm still of the habit of backing up my own files, and there's things I won't put on the cloud just because I don't trust it. Maybe I'm old school that way. When it comes to my media, I guess I've given over a little bit to the trend of streaming things and keeping your library online even though you don't own anything. I guess it makes some sense, I guess, but it's not 100% comfortable for me. And there are times I still dig into the old Blu-ray discs, even though it actually is harder to load a Blu-ray disc and takes longer for the whole thing to come up than it is to stream the same thing. Sometimes I just take a kind of an odd pride in doing it that way. I don't know what to tell you. But that doesn't mean I don't have some sort of plan. I have a TV antenna. I hope you do have a TV antenna, and I hope you get it from solidsignal.com. Why? Because, there's times that something will go down. There's times that you just want to have a variety of entertainment. There's times you just want to be in control, to be old school. There are times that I will haul out an old portable TV that I've got and just plug it in and start watching, because that's, there's something to that experience of just letting go and letting the waves take you. That's what live television brings you. And there's also a feeling of satisfaction knowing that if you have some sort of loss of connection, or if your cloud provider gets disconnected, that you still have the ability to get to your older stuff, the stuff that's important to you. More than anything, I recommend kind of both and either kind of philosophy. If it's important to you, have a physical copy of it. If it's important that you see it, make sure that you have a way to see it, like, local news, radio, that sort of thing. It's not that expensive, and there's great places to do it, which is why I tend to bring up solidsignal.com. They keep the lights on this podcast, and so I would appreciate if you'd give them a chance. You'll find all the accessories, tools, and all of the devices that you need to make the most of your digital life. And when it comes to digital self-reliance, you'll find an awful lot of things to help you with that endeavor. I guess that's about it for the podcast this week. Like and subscribe. That's right. I rely on the cloud to help me with my self-esteem, according to my superiors. So that's another thing in which I guess I can't be self-reliant. But leave a comment anywhere where you get this podcast, and we'll talk to you again some more next week.